Hey guys, welcome to Massi Media. This is episode 1. We're on the 40 Years, 40 Beers network. This is a show where we talk about apps, break down tech, music, deep dives on film, anything that's going on, anything that interests me, anything that interests you guys. Let's talk about it. So, episode 1, have to start it off with Major Figgas, Philly Dynasty. This is going to be the most thorough discussion on the major figures on the internet, guaranteed. So obviously there's State Prop, there's Beans himself, there's Will Smith, Ram Squad, etc. But Major Figgas was the best group that came out of Philadelphia, hands down, past, present, and future. That's my opinion. It is what it is. But the group, when Yeah, That's Us dropped, we were so happy and proud, right? But it was so unbelievable that you had people from Philadelphia doing stuff like this. Rough Nation. It was the first time we really saw a group on that scale, right? Because Ram Squad was much, much more local and low key, and State Property came after. So the debut album, Figgas for Life, was unbelievable. My favorite song is It's Our Life. The hook is just, it's embedded in my brain forever. So we have the debut album here. And then I would say within the last 10 years, Bump brought everybody back, all of the original members for the Do What I Wanna remix. Enemy of the State, Bang Bang Anywhere Gang Late was a mixtape. I actually, my cousin Darren knew Dirty Rik. I bought this from Rik in Southwest. He charged me like triple the price, but I couldn't get it anywhere else at the time. I used to go to Sounds of Upper Darby every Friday and try to get the appetizers and whatever I could, right? But for whatever reason, Rik had this faster and I was able to buy it off him. But Enemy of the State is my favorite mixtape of all time. The beef at the time with State Property and the beats that Gillie and the rest of the guys went over, it was just unbelievable. The records that came out of this mixtape for me, like when they went over Next Episode and the Snoop stuff, like Gillie Chill, it was just there's no match. No one in Philly was this street, was this raw, was this smooth, and had this much swag. They're like the Philly Wu-Tang. And to that end, I mean, Rik is kind of like their Capadonna. Then you had Fuck the Bootleggers. I made some of my own mixtapes. Wallow 267, he actually hosted a mixtape before jail called Walito's Way. Again, I made my own cover. I didn't have one. Shout out to Philly Mixtapes YouTube channel. That guy has everything under the sun from any Philadelphia artist, not just Major Figgas. So I'm able to listen to a lot of the stuff that I either don't have on CD or that I wasn't able to get my hands on. I go to his channel all the time to listen. So Wallo hosted a mixtape with Spade and Gillie and the rest of the guys. And he called it Walito's Way, Volume 1. The group is comprised of 9 people. Again, just like Wu-Tang. You have Gille Da Kid. You have Spade-O. You have Dutch. You have Ab-Liva. You have Bump J, Bianca, Chops and Ruck, and then later came Dirty Rik. All right, let me stop you right there. Listen, I know I didn't mention Rolex. You gotta relax. He was on like 1 or 2 songs. True Cannon, Do Damage, 2 Hammers. We all heard the record. But he disappeared after the PHILLY song and the first album. And then I know cats are gonna say like De Niro, Peanut. I don't recognize them as actually part of the original group. They weren't on any of the Appetizer mixtapes. They weren't on, De Niro and Peanut weren't on the album, and they didn't have the same kind of presence that Dirty Rik did. And they're not honored like Chops and Ruck are, right? Chops and Ruck still have a basketball tournament that goes on in 2026. So I don't consider them part of the actual group just because of how early they left or how late they came in and how little they contributed. So now let's talk about Dutch and Spade as a group, right? Chops and Ruck died at a very young age. We didn't really get a lot out of them after the first album and some of the very early mixtapes. But Dutch and Spade were a solo group. They did records with Beanie, Dead Man Walkin'. They were on Cameron's second album, SDE. They did a record with Ludacris. They were signed to Lance on Rivera's Entertainment. Actually, Dutch has been vocal recently about some issues there, right? The royalties and payment and things along those lines. I'll link his social media videos about that down below. So, and he was also recently on Math Hoffa's My Expert Opinion podcast. I think it was episode 99, if I'm not mistaken. And I saw him assisting with other interviews. I think I saw him with Method Man and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if he's on there officially or what's going on, but love Dutch. I have 3 mixtapes from Dutch. Well, one, I guess, is more of an album that he released officially, but back for the first time. I have no idea what year this came out in. But 17 tracks, and I love this mixtape. So I have this, and then I have, he did a joint mixtape. They were not a group, right? Charlie Baltimore is another, great Philly MC. She was actually going to be part of the commission. She was with Big for a little bit. Her solo album, she's got production by Primo. It's really good. But in any event, they teamed up, Mickey and Mallory Knox, the Natural Born Killers, right? For Natural Born Chronicles Volume 1. I like Philly Stand Up. I like Respect. This is a really good mixtape. And my YouTube here says 2012, so we're going to go with that. Then he released officially, in 2021, right around the second wave of the virus, Numbers I Can Deal With. He's got Conway on here, OT The Real, Shaheem and Petey Crack on a record with Dutch. That's crazy. And then, of course, he hit us with Obamacare with Jada, which is just a great single, period. So I love Dutch. He's like on the Enemy of the State mixtape. He's like the Nate Dogg of the group, kind of, sometimes. And the voice, his voice, I mean, obviously the bars, but his voice is unbelievable. I love Dutch as an individual. I love them together. So I think Spade was originally sentenced to like 25, maybe 30-ish years. And he actually, I believe he got out around 11, maybe 11 to 15 years he did, and then he got out. It's hard to say who the front runner is, right? You might think it's Gillie because of his attitude, but they all had a phenomenal pen on different records. You know, different things shine through. I really can't call it. And so Spade was always phenomenal, like in those early mixtapes. And you look forward to him starting off a record. He actually said that once in an interview that he was like a great person to start off a group. I mean, remember there's 9 of them. He immediately started dropping mixtapes. I think he did Unchained, 50 Shades of Spade. Then he released, and I think it's an official album, maybe an EP. It's called Hall of Fame Flow. And then, no bullshit, one of my most favorite albums of all time. Eventually, thank God, Spade and Lava got together and they decided to do an album. And it's called Glory. Pablo, I think, was the first single, which was good. But Red Leather, Silence of the Lambs, there's so many promises. When I say, even the intro is fantastic. Like when I say start to finish, no skips. I love this record. It's unbelievable to me. I can't wait for Glorified. Please, guys, please. When is Glorified coming out? Again, people might think Gillie is the front runner, but not sure. In any event, the Appetizer mixtapes, they were unbelievable to me. Like I said, I used to go to Sounds of Upper Darby every Friday. There was no way to get news, right? At the end of the last tape, they didn't give you a date for the next one. You know what I mean? So obviously you would wait a few months, but then every Friday I was going, and I was going for other stuff too. So in stores, before streaming, in stores, all new releases dropped on a Tuesday, but Sounds of Upper Darby and even Record Bar in South Philly after school sometimes would get them the Friday before. So Appetizers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, America's Pimp, a million things came out of, I think I got a Dirty Rik mixtape there. A million things came out of Sounds of Upper Darby on 69th Street. But Gillie's catalog, I mean, he went from Rough Nation as a group, and then I think as a solo artist, I think he started with Suave House, 8-Ball, MJG, Tony Draper, and then he moved over to Cash Money. And I think it was just Appetizers 1 and 2, maybe 3, where he was with Cash Money, right? Fuck with Ciamara, There Be No Tomorrow. And so he actually ghost wrote for Lil Wayne. He was on a Cash Money compilation album. Baby had signed him. Nothing really came to fruition there. He never released an album with Suave or Cash Money. But so towards the later Appetizers, right? Like 80 Carat Kid, maybe 4 or 5. He left Cash Money, and I think he was independent for a while. And then I want to say he ended up with Relum Volume Records. Let's take a look at Gillie's catalog. So we have $1 Million Worth of Game. So for those of you that don't know, $1 Million Worth of Game was first a series of skits or bits that he would do on Instagram, right? He would give his followers $1 million worth of game. And then it became an album. And then it parlayed itself into a podcast. Once Wallow came home, Wallow 267 started to, really, really get some traction. He's in another stratosphere. Like Wallow left Earth. He's doing TED Talks and Mel Robbins, all kinds of crazy shit, writing books and stuff. We have Welcome to Philadelphia. In 2015, $1 Million Worth of Game in 2017. And I think that was it from an official album perspective. Best of GDK was obviously something that he released officially as well. But that's pretty much it. Like Gil Smith and some of these other things you see here are just my own personal things I put together. Before playlists were a thing, you had to actually make a mixtape. Right? There were a lot of Smack DVDs. There were a lot of Two Roll for the Streets as like a staple in Philly. But Gillie had a DVD that he released. Again, Sounds of Upper Darby. Marijuana High. Marijuana High was such an amazing DVD to me. Obviously, he walked through the streets and showcased a bunch of artists. I think we're seeing Hollow Man on the screen right now. Roscoe P, Coldchain was there. We'll get to Roscoe later. I think the Clips and Wayne had a little piece in there. He shows you in the studio. It was just a great, underground raw DVD. And it wasn't until years later that I realized he released a soundtrack, the Marijuana High Volume 1 soundtrack for this. Now, I don't remember any of the records from the soundtrack being on these freestyles that the guys were spitting, but I just think it was an opportunity for, them to put out a compilation. Appetizer 1, Appetizer 2, Appetizer 3, Appetizer 4, 5, and 6. Again, so like I said, I had AI punch up the covers just to, make them high def, make them look a little nicer in the car and stuff like that. But appetizers were a staple for us, all of us. I Am Philly. Here's the Marijuana High soundtrack. Obviously now he's doing the podcast. He has $1 Million Worth of Game podcast. He's a phenomenal basketball player, right? He talks about maybe actually trying to play professionally, but just an unbelievable catalog. After the Appetizer 6 ended, right? I was like, what's going to happen next? What are we going to get? 6 felt so polished. He had solo record. He had Dutch. I think Monster was on 5, right? Monster was a solo from Lava on 5, but Dutch and Bump had solos on 6. Tons of Philly, like Sandman, Ness, everybody was on it. But 6 felt so polished, right? The Breathe freestyle and all those things. He had like Validation, Notorious K.I.D. He hooked up with Drama. Gangsta Grillz put out the King of Philly Volume 1. I think then he put out the King of Philly Volume 2 on his own. Maybe that was an official release. I'm not really sure. And then Superstar J put out King of Philly Volume 3. Speaking of Glory, I don't know if that's going to be a long-term group, right? Or they just got together for one, hopefully 2 albums, guys. But Lava is absolutely a solo artist as well. So for the longest time, at least in my neighborhood anyway, if you were paying attention, there was a rumor that Lava had a mixtape out called The Man That Would Be King, but I could never get my hands on it. So this first one you see here is just a compilation of things that I've collected that Lava seemed to either stand out on or be on by himself. And a lot of them were just freestyles, Two Roll for the Street shit. You could see some Sandman here. But this was just cobbled together and I called it the name, which was The Man That Would Be King. That was the name in the streets. That was the rumor of the album. But then years later, I actually got my hands on the official album and it is, or mixtape rather, it is unbelievable. I mean, some of the stuff is like Smooth Thug. Some of the stuff is on other things, right? Like Hot Damn and A-Relda's Beat is Hot. All that stuff is on Neptune's compilations and things like that. But this is the official mixtape. And once I got my hands on it, it was unbelievable to me. But I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I think Lava might be my favorite. Again, just like Dutch, it's the voice, but he's almost 7 feet tall. And obviously, I mean, he stands out in a different way, right? Like they all stand out differently, but he ghost writes for people. He used to be, I don't know if he was just with him and they were trying something out or he was officially signed to Dr. Dre, but he had a record where they sampled the Munsters theme song. It was called Monster. And he's got the I'm a Monster, Jay-Z from his Blackout verse scratched in there. And Melman did that. Now Melman was with Aftermath. He was actually on the Aftermath compilation album. Been there, done that, all that kind of shit. And so he was with Dre for a little bit, and then that stopped. So like all these guys dabbled. They were all in discussions to sign to Rockefeller for a decent amount of time, but they decided against that, right? As far as I understand, there was an offer made, but so all of these guys dabbled with, right? Like Gillies was Suave House and Cash Money, and Dutch and Spade were with Entertainment. They did stuff with Ludacris and Cameron and Charlie Baltimore, and Charlie was with The Commission with Biggie, and Lava was with Dr. Dre, and then Lava ghostwrites for a lot of people, right? Like I think I don't keep tabs on it that granularly, but one of the last major records I know that he ghostwrote on, I think he did a few tracks on Yeezus for Kanye, and he's always had a relationship with Pharrell and the Clips, obviously. And so one of the things that happened for Lava was when we talk about groups and other things that these guys are doing and have done, Pusha T and Malice from the Clips, Lava, and then Sandman, another Philly artist, another great Philly artist he was like an honorary. He did a lot of records with them. He was on tons of the Appetizer stuff. They were on tons of his, like Ginormous and Heart of the City and all that stuff. But he wasn't an official member of the group. And they formed the Re-Up Gang. They got with Clinton Sparks and they did the Re-Up Gang Volume 1. Now, I don't know if it's on 1 or 2. Pharrell has a freestyle over the Elevators beat, me and you. It's unbelievable. That was the first time I realized Pharrell could actually rap. Like, Pharrell might be better than Kanye. Like, that might be a crazy opinion, but if you know, you know. And then he did a Gangsta Grills Skateboard P. I forget what the name of it was, but he did a Gangsta Grills mixtape when he goes over the Liquid Swords beat, and that is a phenomenal mixtape. Clinton Sparks, We Got It for Cheap, Volume 1. Clinton Sparks did Volume 2 as well. This, I think, it's either Maybe. Yeah, it's Maybe. So there's a Maybe interlude, and then there's the Maybe record, which is actually Pharrell going over the Elevators beat. Again, so we go back to Volume 3, and now they're with Gangsta Grills with DJ Drama, and then you start to get a Sandman solo, Ava solo, just like Gillie had on the Appetizers. And then the Re-Up Gang actually released an official album, 11-track album in stores as well. And the thing is, though, that Malice quit hip hop for a very long time, right? I mean, that should be no surprise to anybody who's interested in this discussion. And Sandman and Malice, they kind of separated from the group. The group stopped performing, as the unit of 4. But then when Malice quit, so the Clips kind of stopped for a very long time. They came back last year, but in any event, Push put out a bunch of stuff on his own, tons of solo albums as Pusha T. And Lava remained connected with that relationship throughout the entire time. I haven't heard a lot from Sandman and Clips since the end of the Re-Up Gang. Malice did 1 or 2 records under the name of No Malice. But then Lava stayed connected with Push the whole time. So he was on every solo album of Pusha T. And then when the Clips put out their joint album last year, Lava was on the record called Inglorious Bastard. So he's maintained that relationship. You see him on Instagram like he's flying to Paris and you don't know what's actually happening. But then when you realize that Pharrell is the creative director of Louis Vuitton and the Clips recorded the whole album in the Louis Vuitton headquarters in Paris, and then you hear him on Inglorious Bastards, now you know why, he was there. So you follow these guys on social media, and then you start to put things together. Like, I knew from a kid that they were briefly with Entertainment, but it wasn't until a few weeks ago I heard Dutch say there were issues there, right? So like, it's nice to grow up with these guys and see them as adults now and still be able to follow along in a much different way, right? Than you were when before all I had was the sounds of Upper Darby. And if they didn't drop anything, I was screwed. Until I met Dirty Rik and was able to get my hands on Enemy to State. But it's nice to be able to follow along with these guys, in the background. And like I said, Gory is one of my favorite albums of all time. I cannot wait until Glorified drops. Please, fellas. I don't have a lot on Bump. I know that he did I think he might own his own studio at this point. I don't think he took over Batcave, but I think he's got his own space. Obviously, I mean, when he sampled Blow the Whistle for Pretty Girls in the VIP, and he has his own mixtape series. He has, I think, 5 installments of Get It the Hard Way. And I only have number 3, Get It the Hard Way. I only have volume 3. I was only able to get my hands on volume 3. Like, this is actually something in my personal YouTube music uploads. But he has 5 installments. Pretty Girls in the VIP is like the standout record of his. It's like one of my favorite records. He did the remix with Gillie and Petey Crack as well. But like I said, Bump was the one that got everybody back together several years ago for the Do What I Wanna remix. And it was nice to hear all 9 of them. Well, I think Rik had passed at that point, but it was nice to hear all of them on a record together. I have even less about Bianca. I mean, obviously, she's a spitter. I think she was better than Eve. I think she may be the best that we know of. She may be the best female rapper from Philly, but Bianca Jones, the first lady, she was on all of the Appetizers. I don't know that she ever had her own project, and I don't really know what happened to her. And I have even less information about Chops and Ruck. Like I said, I think one of them, if not both of them, died at a very young age. You hear them on a couple records. They're on the official album. But other than that, the group, just in general, obviously, phenomenal body of work. When you zoom out and look at everything we just talked about, special place in my heart. Now, honorary members. Dirty Rik. Rest in peace to Dirty Rik. He came later. Like I said, I knew him personally. I do have an album of Dirty Rik's. Now, in 2011, the return of Dirt Diggler. And, I mean, he's got a video for Cream. My favorite record on here is Cream, but I like some of the other songs as well. But Rik has some phenomenal verses on Appetizers 5 and 6. He really does. And I liked him as an artist. I know that him and Gillie had beef. I know that before he passed, there were major issues there. And then there was a small period of time where I can't find anything online, but I do remember, I have a memory of Bag and Deal for Real. Bag and Deal was a group with him and someone else. And I remember, I don't know if it was MySpace. I remember listening to a few tracks of theirs. And in any event, recently, so we talk about Roscoe P. Coldchain. Roscoe he was also on the Neptunes compilation. The song Hot, which had Pusha and I believe Boo-Bonic from Philly's Most Wanted. And Roscoe was also on Marijuana High, and Roscoe had his own mixtape, which was great. And Pharrell had some production from Pharrell on there. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, these guys, they were everywhere. They were ingrained in everything, and they still are. And most of them are all still friends to this day, which I think is unbelievable. And Roscoe was in jail for a long time. He recently came home in 2024. He's got a song on his 2024 album called Dirty Rik. It's like in remembrance of, it's like an RIP kind of record. Apparently they were really close. I didn't know that until the song came out. Obviously Sandman, ginormous. I'm waiting for Nostalgia, the Sick tape. I think I have cobbled together a bunch of songs from SoundCloud and stuff, but it's not official. I don't know. He's got like his own TV network, and it's hard to keep track of everybody all the time, right? I mean, like, I got 3 kids, multiple jobs. My wife's super busy. So it's like, it's not easy, but I think I do a pretty good job. And I have a Boo-Bonic mixtape called Transylvania, hosted by Don Cannon. That was pretty dope. Speaking of Too Raw for the Streets, I think I saw comedian LSD on one of those freestyles with some of the Major Figgas. I'm pretty sure I saw Reed Dollaz in the background. Reed, RJ Payne, Eddie, Frank with the Grippers. We'll do something about them. Maybe they'll be the next episode. Same thing. Reed, I'm pretty sure Reed is with, what's his name now? The Clover G's. And Rain Man, Izzy for Real, RJ Payne. It's a whole thing. But if you know, Philly Dynasty, Major Figgas, episode 1 is in the bag. This is the inaugural episode of Massi Media, the podcast. Bobby's got a podcast coming soon, The Bane of Our Existence. It's a political podcast. I think that's a fantastic name. The cover art, his logo looks super dope. We're going to get some shirts made. Again, offshoot of the 40 Years, 40 Beers Network. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Catch you next time.